Right, great. All right, so I'm gonna tell you a story, as Scott said, and actually we're gonna touch mostly on the thermal side. But I'm gonna talk about sort of the path to how we are going carbon neutral at Cornell, and why we think that's important to do, particularly because as a land-grant university who really takes their mission seriously and thinks about our land-grant presence beyond the state of New York, we are interested in not just impacting the campus to go climate neutral, but how does it change the way we do things worldwide. And so it's a thrill to be here at the Smithsonian, particularly because Secretary Skorton is the former president of Cornell, as some of you may be aware. And in fact, in 2007, he committed us as a campus to go climate neutral by joining the president's climate commitment. We look at that commitment with sort of three pillars. We've got to engage the campus, we've got to reduce energy demand, and of course, we've got to find renewable energy sources. And so all three of those are areas we are actively working on, and there's been a ton of work at Cornell, and particularly with our very innovative facilities group in collaboration with the faculty and staff. And so we think of the campus as a living laboratory, as a test bed to look at testing solutions and engaging students, staff, and faculty. We've got Division I sports teams that have a carbon footprint. I never realized how big the carbon footprint was from a Division I sports team. But all that said, we are looking at the entire campus then to say, how do we bring ourselves down by 2035 to zero carbon? In fact, this has been a mission since well before 2007. In 1990, we had a X of carbon footprint. We've already reduced 50% since our 1990 footprint, so way before it was in vogue to be thinking about climate action. We were doing so, not that we shouldn't have been doing it back then. 2007, since 2007, when Secretary Skorton committed the campus to climate neutrality, we've dropped another 32%. Oh, we've dropped 32%, so the first 18 from 1990 to 2007. So in fact, here's the history, and one of the things I like to always say is we were one of the first climate neutral campuses. In 1880, we built a 1 megawatt hydro plant that powered the entire campus. 1 megawatt doesn't do it anymore, but that actually sits in our gorge right here, Beebe Lake Dam. Since then, we've done a variety of projects, but in particular, in 2000, we built the Lake Source Cooling Project, district cooling for campus, dropped our energy use by 10% in 2000, and was motivated by having to remove CFCs from our cooling system. So we took the opportunity of dropping our CFCs per the protocols to visit three possible scenarios on how we would do it. We could replace CFCs with electric-fired chillers that use non-CFC based refrigerants. Fine solution, would have worked, might have been slightly cheaper than what we did. We looked at ground source heat pumps, basically heat exchangers to do cooling, and that was actually strongly considered. But we went with deep cold water in the lake. I'm going to show a picture of that in a minute. You see it over here in the left side corner. 270 feet below the surfaces of Cuba Lake, an important body of water in Ithaca and to Cornell. The water temperature is always below 45 degrees. So we circulate that water open loop through a set of heat exchangers down on the shores of the lake right here, and it cools a district cooling system for the university, providing all of our cooling needs. We've added, in fact, the protagonists are here. So Jeff Weiss and his company Distributed Sun have been instrumental in bringing solar to the campus, and you can see we've now got 7% of our electricity generated by solar, thanks to Cornell actually working with the state to innovatively change the remote net metering laws, and Jeff and his team helping us figuring out how to maximize the chance to leverage that opportunity and provide electricity. And we have since then also converted to a cogeneration plant, so we retired coal to create a natural gas-fired plant that is a cogeneration plant that provides a lot of our remaining electricity. But of course, we are looking by 2035 to retire that plant. It was just commissioned in 2009 because we want to solve the heating problem, which is often not talked about, in a fossil fuel way. How do you do that for a campus of 30,000 that's in central New York, which, if you haven't visited, is kind of cold in the winter? So let's talk about those two projects for just a minute before I get the axe. So lake source cooling, an innovative history at Cornell. I talked about this collaboration between facilities, campus facilities, which are not usually thought about as innovative, and the faculty, which don't normally talk to each other. I have colleagues in other programs, they don't even know who their facilities teams are. We have phenomenal engineers, phenomenal environmental scientists in our facilities group, and I engage with them almost on a daily basis. This project was the brainchild of a guy named Lanny Joyce, who was one of our leaders in this group, and it's, as I said, motivated by CFC reductions. 86% reduction in the electricity used to cool campus. 10% of the power that we actually, electric power we used in 2000, 25 million kilowatts per year. What I don't have on that slide, back in 2000, we were coal-fired electric. SOx and NOx dropped 90% from campus's use by dropping this. The other huge piece is we happen to be in a state that has a pretty big energy suck downstate called New York City. Biggest peak load for Cornell campus is August, September. That's the biggest cooling load for New York City. We shaved 15 megawatts off the peak state load by putting in lake source cooling. It's a huge advantage to the New York State grid and to New York City. So what's the future? That's sort of the story of how we've done innovation in the past. The future for Cornell is to now basically take lake source cooling and flip it upside down. Upside down in the sense of the thermometer. We want to drill below campus 3 to 5 kilometers and tap water that's about 250 degrees. Now we're not going to tap the water. We're going to put water in because we have dry, hot rock. Some of you may be familiar with Iceland's geothermal play or the geysers out west. These are wet, shallow, very hot rocks, often steam generating electricity. The quality of this resource is not optimal for generating electricity, but it is fantastic for direct heating and direct use of heat, which, by the way, if you didn't realize, Paris heats, I'm not going to quote the number, but a lot of homes, like I want to say 1 million, but I didn't quote that number. A lot of homes in Paris are on direct use geothermal, which most people don't realize, including me until I read that statistic recently. So the idea is to circulate water below ground, create a reservoir in the rocks, pump water in a closed loop through that system, through another heat exchanger that then heats a hot water campus loop. That direct use is 90% efficient. It's a renewable resource, and it is something that has never been done at this scale. So we are in the process right now of a 5-year phase of getting to the plans of doing a test well. And we are looking at things like induced seismicity, of course. We're looking at things like community outreach, and the engagement piece that is one of the pillars is so important. Because if we're going to do anything truly innovative, we've got to convince campus, and we've been out in public on campus with this project. We've got to convince the community, because if we're going to potentially be injecting liquids into the ground, of course there's a concern about induced seismicity, about water contamination, and all the things that come up with associated resource mining. And so we've got to understand what the public's concerns are and how to work with them to help us understand the process, their concerns, and move forward with a new energy source. So I will leave it there.